report on wastewater treatment system.
Doesn't matter.
Why she wants to be here, at least use that mic or it's on the other mic.
The board will have a presentation by Ed Gillette. He's the principal of the firm Environmental Engineering Management Associates. Ed's been in the wastewater treatment business for a fair number of years. And he's currently we're contracted with his firm to operate the wastewater treatment plant. It's been there for a little more than a year. And I think it's appropriate for the board to understand some of the conditions that Ed encountered, some of the improvements were made, and I believe that he will also have a few comments to make about the inflow pump station and when that work will be completed. So first of all, I'm started off with which one? Can I hold it? Okay. This is Ed's. So you have an understanding of some of his experiences, his CV, resume, whatever you want to call it. He's been in the business for a fair period of time, has a number of degrees, not degrees, and licenses from the EP and other states. Some of his plants. All this report will be on the website tomorrow, including his CV. Okay, all right. This is the area of the wastewater treatment plant. We'll be referring to several things as Ed's going through it. You want to start your present?
First off, good evening, everybody, and thanks for having me, I think.
Please speak louder.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Allen.
Does this work?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for having me tonight, and good evening. I hope it's a good night. The first thing I wanted to mention to you is the influent pump station. The influent pump station failed and flooded on the night of October 16th to 17th, 2008. Of course, all the pumps were underwater for a number of days, had to be taken out and refurbished. They are currently being refurbished now. And subsequent evaluation of the pumps and motors indicate that very little, if any, preventive maintenance has been performed on the equipment. And my comment says at least a decade. My opinion is, I believe they were put in '92, and I don't think they were ever maintained. The dryer failed before we were on site. Subsequent investigation showed severe corrosion, erosion, where the material was worn away, and previous internal fires. It appears that the unit had not been correctly operated or maintained. All right. Centrifuges, which take the liquid material and make it more solid on something you can shovel. Repeated failures due to incorrect operation and maintenance. Apparently people have been fiddling with the internal mechanics of the system. The controls failed due to the atmosphere where they were located, and we're still determining what some of the costs are. The SCADA system, all of you know what a SCADA system is, Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System.
The public probably doesn't have.
So
Can you explain that to the public?
Okay, that's an alarm system, and in some plants, a system where you can control the plant from remote locations. I know operators with complete systems that can run the plant from their phone. The SCADA system, it's very interesting. When John had me come in, I was given a tour of the plant, and I was shown the SCADA system. All right. So we started running and operating, and the computers were obsolete that they used, and they weren't connected to anything. So he had a nice fancy board sitting there with nothing operating. And they sold that to me, and they also sold it to DEP, and they aren't happy. Primary clarifier number one, internal components completely worn out, tank failed, had to be rebuilt. Way more than a decade to reach this condition. The last thing that goes in a tank like that is the wear strips on the bottom of the tank, and they were gone. Primary clarifiers 2, 3, and 4 all have a variety of issues, the same thing. If you understand how they operate, there are chains and flights and cross collectors, and they all require some repair. Digester gas piping and valves. The anaerobic digestion gas system was completely plugged, and all the valves would not operate, which means they had never been exercised, and the only way to fix those is to replace it. This condition took far more than a decade to develop, and it was probably, they never operated it from day one. Waste gas burner had failed, potentially explosive mixture of methane being vented to the atmosphere. A temporary repair has been completed. There's a functioning igniter there, but not the fancy automatic one. Disinfection. The existing system uses gas chlorine. The existing equipment is more than 20 years old and is failing. Replacement is required. How do I know it's more than 20 years old? It's all what's called a company Fisher and Porter, and they've been out of business for more than 20 years. Dechlorination not present. If you understand your permit has a requirement for chlorine residual and for disinfection. At anything close to design conditions of the plant, the flow, without trying to get too technical, you can't chlorinate and meet that chlorine residual without dechlorinating. Aeration blowers. This kind of surprised me. The existing blowers are centrifugal units from the 1990s. At some point, they put fine bubble aeration in, and DO control, but didn't reduce the size of the blowers. One reason we used, so it was a good idea that they went halfway with. They were 250 horsepower blowers. You could have gotten away with 50s or 75s at the worst. In-plant potable water system completely failed and had to be replaced. All the tanks corroded up. These are what I call the major issues. We have a list of pumps, compressors, and whatnot that have failed, have to be either rebuilt or replaced. And to give you an example with compressors, if you understand the atmosphere around the sewage treatment plant, eventually compressors corrode out and have to be replaced. You can't rebuild them. But then pumps and whatnot, when we put pumps in a plant, you either have 2 pumps, which is 1 for operation and standby, or 3, which is lead, which is normal operation, peak, whatever, and the 3rd one is backup. In virtually every pumping system in the plant, you were down to 1 pump that needed to be rebuilt. Everything else was out of service. So my comment is this plant went in approximately 92, and the maintenance wasn't done. John, how deep do you want me to get?
Well, I think it's important, if we talk about some of the slides. The first slide is the liquid, the hauled waste, where it was being dumped, what's the issue with that, and where we go from this point forward. You want to show that on the map, what number the waste is?
You can bring the mic. You can take it off the, just take it off the podium. Thanks, Jim.
Obviously, I don't do a lot of this, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. The waste was being dumped. John, you have a picture of it.
Yes, I do.
Exactly.
I want to show you where.
most of the waste was being dumped in here
Okay, and where does it go
or
from?
here,
Where does it?
multiple spots.
All right. The treatment process, I think it's important for everyone to know, it goes from there into the influent pump station?
Okay, here's, influent pump station is number one. Pumps it up to the headworks building, which is here. And in here you have a grid chamber and screen. The grid pump wasn't working when we got here. From here, it goes to the primary clarifiers, which are,
To the left, upper left.
there it is. This is the tank that had to be totally rebuilt. These other three need help. And it flows by gravity through the aeration tanks, second stage aeration, into the 4 clarifiers. Okay, and then chlorine contact tank and, where have I got? Chlorine contact tank and out, 16? Yeah.
7 is chlorine.
Chlorine contact tank. I'll get it.
Look at that.
All right, I think, Ed, it's important to note that here, this one.
Yeah, here's a normal septic receiving station to screen it and take out what's politely called non-treatables. It used to be cigarette filters and hair, now it's hair and all the plastics we use today that are disposable. And this takes it out and also allows you to settle out the rocks and sand. This is a normal installation. Here's what you had. They just dumped into a pipe right into the tanks.
This is,
Here's your flame arrestor and your flame igniter. This is how bad it was. This is what a normal one looks like. It's got a, if you understand digester gas, it vents, it's not always 100%, it's not 100% methane. The best you do coming out of an anaerobic digester is about 60 to 65% methane, and it's also at 100% humidity. And it you know, you'll get times when, I'll call it, it burps at you and it won't burn. So what happens is you have to, the igniter has to go every 30 seconds, and that had failed. This is basically your influent pump station, and these are the pumps. These are almost 40 feet in the ground. Pick up your sewers, and they're a mess. This is, and we're showing some of the internal pieces. You know, it hadn't been made. You know, look at the conditions, the corrosion hadn't been maintained. Most of it hadn't even been greased. When we took the pumps apart, the bearings came out in pieces. You know, what was there, what should be there. Okay, primary tanks and failure of the various pieces. This is expensive chain. Okay, this is the condition. You can see the condition of the pump base and everything. We gotta put a new pump on it.
Yeah, I think it's important, are the wedges in there? Yeah,
I can't tell exactly.
I think that's a wedge.
Yeah.
They were wedged, the pumps and the motors have to be perfectly aligned.
By somebody who knows what they're doing.
And they have to be attached to the base of the system.
Yeah, here's where the connection, obviously from the motor to the pump. And
And-
that's covered.
And they've got in there the motor, the blue thing was wedged upward so that it wasn't attached to the foundation. So they had to take them out and put it back in correctly.
Motor It's general maintenance.
This is just,
The motor was clean.
yeah,
Your influent pump station had a device on it called the muffin monster. If you wanna know what that was, it's a very heavy-duty garbage grinder. And it failed and it was just taken out and it was laying there in the grass. And of course, all that stuff going through the pumps doesn't help either.
I think that is,
Tank arm. It was previously broken and somebody tried to fix it by welding an angle onto it. We were expecting a quote to fix it correctly. This is the circular tanks I showed you, the final clear, well, this was a thickener, same thing. It comes around and the stuff that floats gets swept up into a beach for disposal somewhere else. One of the main problems with that is the grease you have in the system. You know, when the grease comes in, it'll come through the treatment process and it ends up as little white globules in the surface of the final clarifier, and those have to be swept away. And of course, anything else that gets to it.
I think that was the last picture. I think, from our perspective, I think it was important for the board and public to realize the difficulties that the plant was experiencing. And I think it's a good object, understanding that one of the reasons why that I think at the present time that the operation of the wastewater treatment plant is a core function of government. It had been back in the 90s when population was expanding and the sewer lines had to be installed and expanded. But once you reach the maturity that the township is in, the operation of the system is complex. Changing the regulations, maintaining, it's clearly that the maintenance here was less than good, and it would take a considerable amount of money to really rehab the system, and that relates directly to an increase in rates. But I think the sale of the system was an excellent opportunity for the board to alleviate itself out of a headache that we've had going on for decades.
And the collection system is in similar condition.
Yes.
It looks like a sieve.
Yes. Part of it is the older construction methods back in the 60s. Part of it is it was never maintained to the extent that even the treatment plant was.
Well, so it was said that by someone that the plant about 5 years ago was in pristine condition. What's your thoughts on that?
No.
Oh.
Somebody was misinformed, it was a mess.
Okay.
And it was becoming, maybe it wasn't quite as bad as it is now, but it was, as I say, the SCADA system we were shown, it wasn't there. The methane system, that didn't happen in 5 years. And certainly the pumps and the inflow pump station didn't happen in 5 years.
Right.
Any other questions from the board?
Aaron? Any questions from the audience?
Yes. Any better material out there
What do you,
for these?
just say your name. Even though we all know you.
Hold on and say your name.
Come on. Mr. Hoover, come on.
Panhandler Ord, 1080 acres, Birchwood.
There you go.
I was curious, is there any better material out there, having seen some of those pumps down there already, that would accept your waste going in there, that wouldn't eat them up as bad?
Well, we use about the best materials there are, and for example, those were Chicago pumps. The company's name was Chicago Pump, and they're about the best pumps out there, and it's probably the only reason they kept running. We use the best materials we can.
I respect your expertise, but I was just curious, after looking at some of those pictures and going through there in open house, I find a lot of things there I just don't believe
It's hard to
occurred.
Okay, I want to make that point. In the business, Exeter was known, in the sewer business, we have organizations, and Exeter was known as a good plan. And I got here and it's fallen apart.
Well, how long ago was that?
that I got here?
No, that you got that information, it was a good plan.
Well, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago. And, this didn't go on, I mean, this has been going on for decades.
I can't argue that, because what I see, what you have there, I see. The fact that I know it was only operating at half of what it was built for.
Correct.
And there should have been preparations made that you could have bypassed some of that and got it fixed without it going to that extreme.
Correct.
And you would think when they spent the amount of money they put in there to put the dryer in to address an issue of reducing what had to go to the landfill and encourage other municipalities to bring their waste here, that those issues should have been addressed. Something's radically wrong. I'm not blaming you, but there's something wrong. I can't tell you what you saw.
I mean, all I can tell you is what was here when I got here.
And that was a
how
hell of a
long it
mess.
took to get there.
That was a mess. I was just curious if there isn't better materials out there. Because I know that stuff is powerful.
Yeah, we use about the best material you can, but I'll give you an example. Your influent pump station, the standard number in Pennsylvania is about 4 cubic feet of grit per million gallons treated. Grit is high specific gravity material, sand, that will settle out. So what you're doing is constantly sandblasting,
Okay.
and gently compared to normal sandblasting. But that's the problem. You get up towards 20, 30 years old, it wears out.
Okay, I can't argue that. I was just curious. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Mr. Richard?
I think I can.
Sorry, I'm hard.
What's that? Yeah, you can stay there. It's fine.
I'm hard of hearing. So.
Looks like
Michelle Kircher, 1101 Stonehenge Drive. First of all, when you put presentations on, I wish you would post them so we have time to look at them, not just throw them up here that we don't have time to study and see what's on. It's not fair to the residents of Exeter Township.
Yeah, this will be on the website tomorrow morning,
I know,
like we said.
tomorrow morning's too late. We need a few days to see what you have up there. Second, if this has been bad for this long, and I assure you it hasn't been, and they were still in the process of building it in '95, I sat there for almost a whole year watching it being built. Gannett Fleming, who I highly recommend for any type of sewer project, was right on everything and gave detailed reports. Those reports should still be in archives of the sewer plant, and they would tell you month to month, which they gave the sewer authority, exactly what was going on and if there was any problems, because I sat for 17 years in those meetings. And we never saw any of these problems going on. So I don't know how they've been occurring for so long. Please let me finish, because I've taken many tours down there, regardless of what you say. And if Gannett Fleming was that bad off, then I think the township has a heck of a lawsuit against them for not performing the duties that they told us about. And I can assure you that Gannett Fleming's reputation throughout the whole state and others will stand up to their reports, and those should not be have been destroyed. Also, I know that there was put many times money in for budgets, and it wasn't put forth through the supervisors. So don't blame wastewater treatment for everything that the supervisors did not put through. I know the past superintendent down there put in a detailed plan, which was asked by, I don't know if it was this board or the board before, and that he wasn't given the money, and I also know that his computer was taken from him and not given back, which had all the information on, which would have helped or supplied information. So I don't know what happened to that computer. Also, there's no mention of how much leachate has been brought into the facility. The leachate would cause a lot of the damage. And and still in Gannett's report, when they go through, they would be able to tell you what's going on down there. The issue with the sewer pipes has been an ongoing issue because there's still clay pipes, as in probably every municipality that hasn't replaced them all in there. And that's different than what the sewer plant's producing. So I think before you start shooting the gun and putting all the responsibility on what happens there's a lot of facts to be looked at, and there's also a lot of information that should be at the sewer plant or in the archives that should have got rid, or Gannett Fleming has them all, that should be brought together and should be available for everyone to see before decisions are made. Because they have monthly reports, the sewer authority had reports all the times in meetings, and there was never any mention of this being in such deplorable shape. And Mr. Biacone, it wasn't in pristine, very good shape for a sewer plant, and you are right, Mr. Gillette, they did, Exeter Township was #1 in the whole county and beyond as far as maintaining an excellent sewer facility. So let's try and find out the reason and look at the reports and narrow it down instead of just trying to pull the trigger and get rid of the biggest asset that we have in the moneymaker. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. You want to respond to some of the
Okay.
comments?
I don't know what reports were given, but this plant hasn't been running right for 20 plus years.
You bring your mic up.
For 20 plus years?
Yeah. I don't think those pumps were ever maintained, nor was the methane system.
Well, then I definitely think that Gannett Fleming should be brought to a public meeting with the records they have and the records we have. And let's put them on and see, and let's have a discussion with the residents and see what's right and what's wrong. And let's have the two experts here so the residents of this township can hear the truth and see the truth, because it was all written down.
Yeah, the other issue is the rates weren't maintained correctly, and it's $21 million in debt. So besides the maintenance issue, which, you know, to me, I toured the plant as well, and it was a disaster, but the issue too is the rates had never been maintained too. So this board had to make decisions to raise the rates, and then now we're gonna make the decision
Well, I
to
can
finalize the sale of it.
understand if you
So
have-
that's another question too, is that, again, it's not only the maintenance issue, it was we didn't maintain the rates to the residents. The rates should have been raised a long time ago. That's why we had to do a 78% increase the last 2 years.
I can understand you having to raise the rates, but we were also not using 7.3 million gallons with the capacity.
You're right.
And we did shut down, when they first built it, they did shut down part of the plant. So part of the plant had brand new pumps. They took some of the pumps out and they closed part of the facility down. So the pumps should have been in good condition because they weren't being used. And there was hope that there was going to be all kinds of building and et cetera to use the additional or connect to different townships. And I don't know if that was ever pursued. But if the township would have built out the 7.3 would have cost us so much more to build now than it was. And I believe most of that 21 million is still on the bond issue. Am I correct?
For the
Sewer plant.
There's some outstanding debt.
Pardon?
There is outstanding debt on the bond issue for the sewer.
Yes. So that's where it comes from. And that usually they're not paid. It's usually 30 years at least for the bond issue. I don't know what kind of financing that was redone on it. But I would like to see everything and all of it so that a decision can be made intelligently, that we get all the facts. That's all we're asking.
Yeah, and like I said, we did have a meeting at 1, and 40 people showed up.
Well, I'll tell you the truth, it
There
wasn't
was a process.
advertised.
It was, so.
Well, in your opinion it was, but everybody I talked to.
This was last year, we're talking, last year.
Well, a lot of people didn't know about it.
Okay.
mean, it's something that really has to be flashed around everywhere, news media,
It was on,
television.
it was on social media as well as the newsletter. I mean,
And when afterwards, everybody found out. I'm just.
no, this was advertised before.
Well, this is a big thing for a township to give that up, and it's gonna be a big rate increase for everyone. And it's gonna be not, when they do something over in Sinking Spring, or they do something in Robisonia, we're gonna have to pay for it. And I don't know if everybody knew about that. And, it's a different kind of animal.
Well, that's actually a positive, because now you could spread the rate across the entire state. So thank you. That's actually a positive.
No, well, you may
When something
think
goes
it
wrong,
is.
no, when something goes wrong, it's gonna spread the pain throughout the state versus 25,000 residents.
Wow.
Think about it that way.
I had to deal with PUC and deal with the water, so we won't be drinking Schuylkill River water now. And obviously, I don't know where we had to go, but our water's pretty darn expensive too. So all I'm asking is, let's give this a fair chance and find out all the information and get everybody's questions answered. And let's find out what was on that computer that went missing, so we can see what kind of plans were put in. And let's not just say, well, we don't know, there was nothing ever done, there was never any maintenance, when I know that there darn well was.
Oh, you're saying that was reported to you. Did you actually do the maintenance?
I know because I was on the board till 2000.
I understand that, but they obviously didn't lie, is what
Even
I'm
if
saying.
there's
They didn't lie, because Gannett Fleming does not lie, they wouldn't lie. They wouldn't have the they wouldn't have so much competition.
Stop it. I gotta stop you. Come on.
Even if there's a report that says XYZ was done, does that erase? Does that just make that go away?
Well,
I mean, does that mean we don't have to fix all that?
I didn't say we didn't have to fix it, but I say if there's a plan that maintenance has to be done, and if the board of supervisors, one budget for it or one plan for it, and even Gannett Fleming said, look, if this has to be done, and it wasn't done, I mean, we need to know about it. We need to know what happened, that it got in this state to begin with. And I think we have a right to know what happened and what.
I think your mic.
Press the button. The battery's not dead. So.
I couldn't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
And that's all I'm saying. We want questions answered. And we are here, we put people here on the supervisors board to work for us and to find these stuff out. And we have a right to have our questions answered. It's as simple as that.
I answer all questions. I mean,
And we want answers, and if we ask for certain things, I think we're entitled to it. Because it's gonna affect our pockets, our homes, the value of our homes, and our way of life here.
Everybody's, we all
Yeah.
here, everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, we agree, that's why we're making the
And
decision.
we want businesses to come in, this is gonna affect sewer rates of businesses and everything else, so thank you for.
thank you again for your input. Did you want to say anything else? Last word. Thank you so much for your time. Great job.
On the technical side.
Public comment, Miss Vlasic.
Yeah, thank you very much, yeah.
Ms. Vlasic, you have to speak in Italian.
No way. Thank you very much. Pat Vlasak, 211 Rugby Road. After such a serious issue, I feel a little distorted here about this, but it's important to us locally. Just a quick report, update on what's going on with the gardening and maintenance of the grounds at the country club. And I'm happy to say that we're now up to 9 members. We have 4 new members.
Great.
8 of our members of the group within the past 2 weeks completed 86.5 hours of work over at the country club, putting in, we received 7 flats of annuals that were put at the entranceway. We received 2 tons of river rock, which were delivered and also put out onto the river rock beds at the entrance, which really, I don't know if you've gone by, but it looked really crappy before, and it really brightens everything up along with the plants. In one day, all of the 7 flats, we were able to purchase 7 azaleas. They're there to replace the rose bushes that were removed because they were dead. And we did some work around the snack shack, so, and the pro shop. So we're really happy. If you have a chance, drive in, drive through. We're just really proud of all the work that we've done because it's showing, and we've had a number of golfers come to us and thank us, and that they've recognized it, and that just means a lot, that they're not just going on to the course, and we're hoping that it enhances the quality of quality
And
of the country club.
I'm excited. You guys did a phenomenal job, and Dave and I were actually at the country club on Monday, and
Yeah.
you guys,
Oh, thank you very
did a
much.
great job.
We're continuing.
Just that we need to continue the volunteers and
Oh,
make sure
we are.
that they
Yeah,
continue.
and we still need, we can still use more volunteers, so if you know of anybody, if you yourself would like to do it, or you know of anyone, please don't hesitate to contact Michelle.
Are they looking to
And,
expand
we'll be in
to like
touch.
library, stuff like that?
Let's get the, we eventually, but there are other ways. We have some ideas to be able to enhance all of that, but first the emphasis is to get the country club up to snuff. So thank you very much.
Great job, Pat.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mr. Hughes, wastewater treatment plant.
David Hughes,
David Hughes.
255 West 47th Street. First, I'd like to say that, paint a bleak picture with the wastewater treatment plant. I want everybody to remember one thing. American Water is going to give us $96 million for that plant, so it's worth some money. And we have a $7 million CD where we can start doing the repairs and bringing up the stuff, and it's worth it. But what I really want to talk about is how knowledgeable Mr. Granger is about this subject. And I'm wondering if he's ever heard of a company called BP Wastewater Management Associates.
No.
You haven't? Well, you're the treasurer of that company.
EP?
Yes, the first name for B is Babylon, Steve Babylon.
Steve Babylon and I formed a company back in the early 90s that dissolved.
Well, I have a thing right off the website. Wait a minute, I'd just like to finish my comments and then you can answer. So I just got this off the website, and the most recent filing, well, it's active right now. It's an active domestic corporation. You are the treasurer. Mr. Babylon is the president.
Okay.
It's BP Wastewater Management, B for Babylon, G for Granger. And the last filing that was made was on April 10th, 2018. So you're still an active corporation. And you can answer questions later on when these guys start investigating what you're doing, okay? Now, Mr. Babylon was an employee of EEMA. He was the manager of business development and special projects at OEM Service Group. Not only was he an employee of EEMA, but he was also a director at American Water. So I think we need to look into a potential conflict of interest and find out what's going on here, because I think Mr. Granger was brought in here to sell this water treatment plant. And we need to find out some answers to your association with these people and what you're doing with it.
I'd be glad to answer that if you. I wasn't brought in here to sell a wastewater treatment plant. I was brought in here because I do. Okay. I wasn't brought in here to sell a wastewater treatment plant. I was brought in here to spur economic development. That's what I've been doing.
And clean up the mess, the
And
personnel issues we've had.
Has addressed several personnel issues. Steve Babylon, I've known Steve. He was an employee when I worked at Exeter Township back in '80s. We formed a company. I thought it was dissolved after 6 months. I didn't have any business. If Steve's doing something, that's fine. You will not find any document with my name on it as treasurer after 1995, 89, whatever it is. I didn't sign any documents as treasurer.
2018, your name's on it.
My name might be on it, but I didn't sign any documents. Then I think that's an important thing. I've known Ed Gillette, he was the engineer at the Upper Point of Talmadge Municipal Authority. That's how I met him when I was a manager in Talmadge. I've never worked with Ed before. I haven't seen Steve Babylon in 15, 20 years. And that's it. And I'll find out more and I'll report back to the board.
Good.
We need an investigation.
Regular approvals, minutes, June 24th, 2019.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Disbursements. Approval.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Old business, authorization to advertise short-term rental ordinance, Airbnb.
Mr. Chair, I believe the solicitor has prepared the ordinance and circulated it to the board. If the board is comfortable with the ordinance, we would need authorization to advertise it for consideration at a future meeting.
We made the edits consistent with what we were directed to do at the last meeting. Do you have additional edits?
No, this was just a question. So this only applies moving forward? Do we know what it, for anything existing? I think that was part of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing we can litigate. We can put in here that will make clear that this would exclude what would be considered pre-existing use. We can certainly take the position that it does, and I don't know that I should provide public legal advice on what the outcome of that would likely be, but we certainly can take that position in good faith.
I just know we talked about it last time.
Right, and we looked at it, yeah. If it's the board's directive that we take that position, then that's, we can work with the zoning officer to do that.
Yeah, that's what I would wanna do. Yeah, after that, yeah.
Any other comments on the Airbnb advertisement?
You just need a motion? Make the motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Is that good, Janet? I just want to I wanted to show a good example of Janet and her husband being civil, being proactive, working with the board, get something done.
Yep, got a petition.
And it should
Talk
be
to
done.
everybody about
Should be
it.
done. When you do the right thing and you come to the board, we're willing to work with anybody. So I just want to throw that out there. Thank you, Janet, and your husband. You both were instrumental in helping do that. So I just wanted to give you, and I'll do a clap here. Thanks, Janet. Next, discussion on Panhandler ordinance.
Mr. Chair, the solicitor has prepared a Panhandler ordinance regulating it. It's been distributed to the board. Be glad to have comments on the ordinance. The chief spearheaded this action. He's been heavily involved in it. He's reviewed the ordinances. Excuse me as well, if you want to have questions, so I can direct them to the solicitor and to the chief.
Yeah, I would probably defer most comments to the chief.
Any question I have is we get a lot of complaints where it's on public, it's at the target, which is not our property. What would the protocol be?
So, with the ordinance, it would require that anybody that's panhandling on private property must receive permission from either the owner or in that case, target the manager or someone in charge that day at the business.
Would it need to be written, or would you guys just verbally talk to the manager to see if it was?
Correct.
Okay, that's fine.
Any other questions on the ordinance?
Have you dealt with this before?
No, what I did do is I took a look at some of the other townships and cities within Pennsylvania and looked at their ordinances. And one of the things that, you can't have a blanket policy prohibiting individuals from panhandling. There are certain rights that they're allowed to have. So one of the things that seemed to stand out looking at the different ordinances, some of which were stricken was that, you know, you have to have an ordinance that prohibits aggressive panhandlers. So those panhandlers that are, you know, following you out of a store, or blocking an entrance, or at an ATM machine, and begging you for money as they come out. The panhandlers that are sitting there with just a sign, that aren't blocking traffic, that aren't, again, you know, in your face or being aggressive, you are allowed to have those sort of panhandlers on private property if they have permission of the owner. So it's, the panhandling ordinance itself isn't an anti-panhandling ordinance. It is an aggressive panhandling ordinance that prohibits aggressive panhandling.
Yeah, just by way of example, like, we didn't want, the definition of panhandling is broad enough that it would include things like the Salvation Army at Christmas time, ringing the bell, and that wasn't the intention, obviously. It was to preclude, you know, the raising of funds by nonprofits. So this ordinance was written in such a way that, like, the Penn State kids with the, you know, with yeah, that would not fall within the prescription of the ordinance. So that's the distinction between the aggressive panhandling and the passive, if you want to call it.
Nice.
You have a question, Linda?
Yeah, I saw on next door that there's young men going around, you know, saying that they're in college and all these things. What are we supposed to do with them? They used to have a permit.
So there are some people going around selling educational books. I don't know if they've come to your house, knocking on your door, asking, peddling educational books. Some of them are from
New Jersey.
Yes, New Jersey or other states. If it's the educational books, again, we have issued a permit on the police department side of the house. You can always ask, have you received a permit? Or if it's in question, give us a call. We'll come out and we'll identify the individuals and make sure that they have a permit to be selling door to door.
Because there was a time they needed a permit. to
Correct,
sell door to door.
and they still do.
And they have to wear it, you know, or wear something, or have something that you chose you, so.
They still do, and they should have, if they receive their permit, they should have a signed permit, saying that they're, again, and if they're asked to display it, you know, they should be able to display it to
I
you.
haven't been bothered, but I see on next door, you know, for the elderly, that's the scary thing. I don't answer the door for anybody, so, it doesn't matter to me, but some of the elderly do.
Yeah, no, understood.
And absolutely, if there's any issue at all, give us a call, we'll come out and we will verify it if they're permitted or not.
That falls under solicitation, right? It's not
Yeah.
being handled.
Yeah, it's the solicitation and the more solicitation.
So, yeah.
Selling for good.
Yeah.
And it's an existing ordinance.
Like I said, I don't know a lot about it, I just know that you've seen it, you know, that it's, a lot of people are, you know, a little upset about this door-to-door thing, and, I mean, you buy books door-to-door, I don't know if they have the books on hand, but you'll never see them, if they don't. You know, I think it's scam, but. Thank you.
Thanks.
My brother years ago used to do that, where he'd go to a place and he'd get like, they would get like books, or 1 week it would be this or that, and he'd go around selling, and you know, he had to get, some of them are legit, but yeah, they usually have them on hand, like the products are on hand per se, but it is kind of
I just noticed
hokey.
it's scaring a lot of people.
No, I agree, it's hokey.
Thank you.
Thanks. Michelle?
What if they leave a bunch of trash? I see a lot of them stand there and they hold a sign
Oh, you mean
and they leave a bunch of trash
when they're panhandling or soliciting?
when they're
Panhandling.
Well, then that's a separate littering issue that can be addressed accordingly. So, again, if it's something where you see they're leaving trash there, again, give us a call, we'll go out and talk to them and express the need for them to make sure that they remove any sort of rubbish when they do less.
Thank you.
So need a motion to, I'll make a motion to authorize the advertising of the Panhandler ordinance.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Next monthly golf report. This would be for the month of June.
It was a very good month in June. Through the end of June, there's a positive cash at the end of the month of $35,000. largely due to two things. One, the revenues into 2018 were $40,000 less, and expenses were $21,000 greater. So it's a combination of increase in revenues and a decrease in expenses. That $60,000 had a significant impact in the positive cash balance at the end of June. Oops. Yeah. You can see the number of rounds played. I think it's a couple hundred more in 19 and 18, primarily due to the weather. But there's another one here. Oh, there it is. This graphic is, the revenues and expenses per activity per round, and pretty much consistent with last year's. The revenue per round, I think, is a little greater because we've had more rounds played, a little bit more revenue coming in. I think this was posted on the web late this afternoon. It'll be posted tomorrow. It's the financial report. The question was asked at the last meeting how much outstanding was still remaining of the packages that were purchased during the year. It's about $61,000 remaining at the end of June. The packages were purchased, but play has not been used.
I did see the advertisement on 422 tomorrow. So that should
The
count.
billboard.
Yeah, the billboard.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's a nice billboard.
So that's the report for the month.
I played twice this weekend. The course was great.
Yeah, need to continue to watch the maintenance and drive people to golf.
Yeah, the parts that aren't getting mowed now, it almost looks like fescue. So it kind of had some effect.
Pretty sure.
Just don't hit there, right?
Yeah, there's a history of that. Any questions? Next, community park.
This is an observation. We've noticed, highway department's noticed that residents are removing their names, the pickets. Some are very good at it and taking the nails, and some are leaving the nails in there. We're recommending that the board direct the administration to remove all the pickets, bring them here, let the public know they can come pick them up here. That way they're safely handled, and remove all of the supporting material at the playground. We keep the pickets here for, at least through the summer, given vacation, people not having the opportunity to pick them up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just even, I'm just looking for, my one buddy wanted one, so, I mean, if you kept them to the end of the year even.
Yeah, that's fine.
Out of line.
Yeah.
How many more is left, Clarence?
There's a lot left. There's also been a couple that you can see they were kicked in because it's at the lower section of the pickets, so you can tell that they kicked them in. Some of them are being ruined, but I couldn't give you a number. There's hundreds of them. There's still hundreds.
A decent amount, yeah. Now, you said though, like 10 years ago, like if there was boards that had to get replaced though, you didn't put names on. I mean, you couldn't put names back on.
There's some been replaced that they didn't put their names into.
So this is more for a safety issue, and it make the residents know that they're available. They can come pick them up. Some may not know they could take it, and some are just ripping them down.
Sure. Now, would you rip down a whole fence? I mean, obviously they don't need to have it up anymore.
Yeah, we take the 2x4s off at that point. No point in leaving them on.
Right, okay.
Safety hazard right now, there's a lot of holes in that fence where small children can get stuck in.
No, I agree. And when you took down the playground equipment, how bad a shape was that?
It was rotted on the bottom. You gotta realize, there's a lot of water comes down off from Louse School, from that hill. And basically, because you have to have 18 inches of mulch, not mulch, but wood chips, playground chips. You basically had a swimming pool there, and those poles were sitting there. And that's just basically what happened. Everything just bought it off the bottom.
So repairing.
The rest of it was all in rough shape too, but posts, the main posts that were holding everything up, they were in very poor shape.
The best idea was to remove it.
Yeah, the insurance company, definitely. Happy.
Okay, thanks.
Any mention? Yep.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. Next, ratification of the settlement with the OCA and Investigation and Enforcement Division of the PUC. You take this one?
Yeah. So the sale application for the wastewater treatment facility has been pending with the PUC for a few months. We've been going through various discovery with the PUC and participating in hearings with the PUC as part of that process. The process itself calls for a 6-month window from the time of filing to the time of in which the PUC is supposed to dispose of the application. At least that's what the statute, the law in this case requires. So we, after we had a hearing at the PUC on last week, and one of the things that came out of that was the potential for a settlement of the application. And the way the process generally works at the PUC with this type of a proceeding or similar proceedings is you have the PUC process has consumer advocates. One is the Office of Consumer Advocate. The other is what's called the Investigations and Enforcement Division of the PUC, which is part of the Public Utility Commission, but it's a separate division, for lack of a better term. So they, in essence, are put in place to protect the interests of the public. At least that's sort of the way the system is set up. You also have the commission itself, which is the fact finder and makes decisions. And then you have the participants in the process, which in this instance included the OCA, Consumer Advocate, Investigations and Enforcement, what they call I&E, the PUC, Exeter, Pennsylvania American, and St. Lawrence Borough. And the parties, as it was said before, in our asset purchase agreement, there was a value of $96 million purchase price that was assigned to the system. And the OCA challenged that valuation, and what they said was that they believed the system, and they had their own experts, is worth $74 million. And primarily the reason that they attached to it was, at least according to their expert, the work that would have to be done by Pennsylvania American in the short term to the plant in the system, that would have to go into their rates. What this is all about for them is how the rates are calculated. So they wanted the value of the purchase price, the value of the sale, to be $74 million for purposes of what they call the rate base. So instead of $96 million, it would be a rate base of $74 million, meaning if the sale went forward at $96 million, Pennsylvania American would in essence eat the $22 million difference. They wouldn't be able to recover that cost, which they did not want to do. And frankly, under our agreement, it would have created some issues for us in terms of being able to move forward. So we negotiated with the PUC, and this took a little bit of time, but we were able to get them to agree to a value of $92 million, which is $4 million less than the purchase price, to avoid litigation. Otherwise, we would have been litigating, putting experts on conflicting experts to offer testimony about what each person thought the value was. Then ultimately the PUC would make a decision. That decision would be appealable. There's a couple out there right now, one in Limerick, one in New Garden. This is a relatively new statute. Both have gone up on appeal, and that process is very expensive because of the experts involved and time consuming. The New Garden one has gone on for years. So the $92 million number we thought was fair in light of where their expert was actually, we thought, good for us. And so I discussed it with John, we discussed it with the board individually, board members, and what we agreed to do was put it at $93,500,000 purchase price. PAWC, PA American would assume the cost of the $1.5 million differential between the purchase price and the $92 million valuation for rate making purposes. So what that means is that the township would have to lower the purchase price from $96 million to $93.5. And then for purposes of rates, the PUC would assign a value of $92 million to the purchase price. The alternative to that would have been litigation, some uncertainty as to the valuation and uncertainty as to whether the deal could be completed or certainly completed as contemplated by the asset purchase agreement. So individually, the board members, because this had to be dealt with at the hearing, indicated some willingness to move forward with it. Has not gone before the PUC, so what I need now, however, to put it before the PUC is a formal motion that would allow, that would approve the settlement, the proposed settlement of the, what's called the 1329 application proceeding. We would lower the cost, the township would lower the cost, or the sale price from 96 million to 93.5 million to 93,500,000, with Pennsylvania American assuming the $1.5 million difference between that and the rate making number. It's a lot of numbers, but what I need is a motion approving that and also authorizing me to do whatever is necessary with the PUC to move that settlement toward a conclusion, if that's the board's decision.
I'll make that motion for the ratification of the settlement with the OCA. And I did talk to Mr. Speaks as well, and he's on vacation today, but he gave his full support as well. He's gonna explain that on the 22nd, so Dave would have voted yes today, just to let everybody know, being transparent. So I'll make the motion.
I'll second
Get a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it.
And you also need a motion to authorize me to take the steps necessary with the PUC to complete this, and if this goes forward, then the sale should likely close in either early October to early to late October.
I'll make that motion for authorization of Sam.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks, Sam. It's been a long journey.
Not done yet.
We're almost there. Is it gonna be constructive?
What do you know?
I'm being honest.
None of my questions are constructive, so.
Well,
I want to ask you a question, Sam. Could we have refused that offer and we would have had our plan back, right? I mean, the deal would have been off.
Could we have refused the offer?
Right, because it was a counter offer.
No, it would have, it's not, well, that's not in that, what would have happened then, unless the board directed me not to move forward with the sale, this was a settlement proposal, so we would still be proceeding with the litigation. So what we were deciding was whether we would resolve the litigation or continue to litigate whether over the additional valuation. Given the cost of the litigation, the fact that they had moved from 74 million to 92 million in terms of rate making valuation, I couldn't argue that continuing to litigate under those circumstances made sense. The board had already made the decision to move forward with the litigation, so that wasn't a
So the
point that
agreement
was
was
on the board.
binding, but the price was the question.
If it was 80 million, then we'd have a different discussion.
Yeah, we could have, the agreement was binding, and we could have said, we wanna stick to the 96 million. However, if the outcome of the PUC hearing if it didn't go our way on that issue, there could have been issues with completing the sale, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so if it was a lesser number, I think the board would have had a different tune, but the fact that we were close to 96 million made a lot of sense. New business, application to zoning hearing board, custom processing.
Mr. Chair, the zoning hearing board has an application for custom processing or a manufacturing facility back off of I think East Neversink. They want to build in addition to their facility, they want to reduce the setback from 50 feet to 30 feet, the side yard setback. Construction, the reason for the incursion is to expand the manufacturing business, but also to keep the products separated in the manufacturing process. So the administration was seeking direction from the board whether or not to have the township representative at this hearing.
Questions?
Again, typically on these, we don't take a position unless there's some overriding issue that Joe identifies.
No, there hasn't been any other issue. We're looking at about 2,365 square foot expansion. The adjoining property is owned by Custom Processing as well, just want to make a note of that.
infringing on themselves.
So if the board consensus is that we just leave it to the zoning hearing board, then that's,
Process play out.
and that's what we'll
Fine
do.
with that?
Department reports, Clarence.
Just continuing with more of the same for the last 2 weeks as we have been. Rain and more rain. A lot of washouts, some pipe failures, that kind of thing, and back to highway mowing again. But basically, it's just mostly MS4 issues.
How's the mosquitoes been? How's the mosquitoes been?
They drowned.
Yes,
They get washed away. You know, the eggs get put there, but then the next day it rains again, and there they go.
Chief?
Just a few quick reminders. Application deadline for police testing is this Friday, July 12th. So if you know anyone who might be interested in testing for our vacancies here, please remind them that that application deadline is approaching fast. PT testing will take place July 27th at the high school here. So far to date, we've received 106 applications for police testing, so we're really happy about that number. And some of the candidates look really promising, so we're excited about that. The department applied for a community policing grant through Target, and I'm pleased to announce that we received a $2,000 award for community policing. So we'll be putting that money to good use. Over the weekend, we were pretty busy. We put some extra patrols out for fireworks-related calls. We had about 14 total calls for fireworks over the holiday weekend. We warned a lot of the individuals, and after the first warning, they stopped. We had some individuals that were setting off legally as prescribed. But all in all, it was a safe weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just two quick items. First of all, I did reach out to the PUC regarding the Norfolk Southern Bridge. Unfortunately, I don't have any good news to report this evening. The deadline was June 30th. As of today, there has not been an extension of time that's been petitioned to the PUC from Norfolk Southern. Sometimes PUC's indicated it might take a couple weeks for this to happen, but we're not very optimistic at this point.
Yeah, there is a, they were required to respond by June 30th. Nothing was filed seeking an extension. I gotta think that they would have, regardless, in my experience, it usually is 24 hours, so that's on the PUC docket. So I can't imagine at this point that something was sought. So what we can do is, there is a violation of a PUC order. That's outstanding. That's an issue for them, and we can raise that with the PUC, and if the board would direct us to do that. And I can work with Joe to do that.
Yes.
Do you want to have a motion?
Definitely.
Yes.
You need a motion?
Yes.
Yeah, I prefer to have a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. I think this is getting almost 3 years now.
Yes.
And just one other small item, we will be meeting with DEP next Friday, July 19th, as a kickoff meeting regarding our Grower Greener grant, which was granted to the township for retrofitting what we call the Sutton Basin, detention basin into wetlands to meet our pollutant reduction requirements, as well as an educational signage for those recreational use, since there's a walking trail that we would implement that as well. This is a meeting to have everything signed that we can proceed with the design and bidding, to have a contractor perform that work. So that'll be taking place next Friday. That's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Good.
What is that question? Did it help us that they didn't file, or that they didn't do anything? That kind of help us in favor?
Are we talking about the PUC? Well, there-
I would say it would help us. PUC did indicate it's not uncommon. However, it's unfortunately, it's just more work on our end to follow up, like Sam said, if there's a violation of the order at this point. If there was an extension of time, we would still have that opportunity within 20 days to appeal that decision or to agree to it. However, since no action's been taken on by Norfolk Southern, now we're into a little bit of a,
Yeah, I mean,
I would say more of legal, and I'll
Yeah.
defer that to you, Sam.
Yeah, the PUC does have the authority to enforce its orders. However, in this instance, what we want is the bridge to be fixed. So could there be some money they require them to pay to the township or something like that? I'm sure they could do that, and they may do that. But it, they could put a new deadline on them as part of that process, and that will help. But ultimately, they need to do it. And we can seek to use the PUC to try to get where we need to be. But if they don't do it, we're left just continually seeking what's called sanctions against them for failure to do it. Now, at some point, they will get to a point where the PUC comes down on them pretty hard and done their entire operation. They're not going to want that. So my hope is that we'll be able to use this to get the process moving.
What point is that?
Yeah, I mean, again,
Roughly.
Yeah, this is, remember, Norfolk Southern is the carrot, they're all over, they're throughout the whole Commonwealth. So, the PUC though is not going to like the fact that there is an order entered that there was not complied with and they didn't even seek relief. I mean, they're not gonna appreciate that. So they'll probably slap them on the wrist and say, you gotta get it done by whatever date. And if this continued, I think we would see something else from them, some sort of regulatory sanction,
And there's almost no way that this work would be done for the start of the fall sports season for Trout Run, right? Even if they started tomorrow and Joe?
I would, my personal, or I would say my professional opinion, I would say there is no, I don't think the work would be done by the fall. I think given the circumstances that DP has by email transmittal indicated no permit has been issued, that would be step one. They would need to secure those permits before they could even start any construction activity, which involves some storm sewer modifications as well as stream encroachment. So I would say it's safe to say it would be done by the fall.
And it's not just a matter of, I know some people were talking about open it just for the lower height. It's not just a matter of the height, it's a safety and environmental issue, right?
Right, and it's a PUC regulated issue. We wouldn't, there would be an issue if we tried to do that at this point, and it is a safety issue.
Anything else, Jeff?
Yes, no, that's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Just that we had an executive session before the meeting where we discussed the employment issue, the Norfolk Southern PUC litigation, and a zoning dispute at Pioneer Crossing, and that's all I have.
Michelle, did you signed up for public comment and?
Just, in the minutes, my name is Giselle, and I'll just add that.
Okay. Thanks. Minutes. Supervisor reports, Jeff.
I met with Clarence and Mike Rowe last week to discuss the Trout Run master plan project, and we're starting to phase it out to, get it to the point where John can start applying for grants. First phase is probably going to be the access road from Gibraltar, so maybe that's a little ray of hope given the bridge situation. Second phase is probably going to be all the utilities for the restrooms, pavilions, concession stands, and whatever happens with the amphitheater area. And then third phase is probably going to be both the parking lots. I think the one lot is 146 spaces. That's the current lot. And then there's going to be another lot in where the current entrance is. That's going to be another 50 spaces. And then after that, it's going to be broken up into some phases where the basketball courts, the pavilions, and then all the baseball fields are going to get turned, because right now batters face the sun, so they're going to turn the baseball fields and then do some more work on the walking path, bike path, jogging path, that area, and just also work on the multi-sport fields, which soccer, field hockey, lacrosse, and football are the main four. So we're getting started with that.
Excellent. Good job. Vinny?
safe and forth. And tomorrow's 1 year anniversary that I was appointed to the board, so I just thank you very much for being able to serve. And like I said, I just hope to continue.
Excellent. Aaron?
Nothing.
I just want to thank Chief and his team with the, there was a lot of noise and commotion with the fireworks, and I thought it was handled very well with the police, and I noticed that it wasn't as bad as last year in terms of the sounds and that. So I think, I credit you and your team putting the more officers on. I think it, it's, again, we showed that, we're here for the community and we did the right thing.
Thank you, I appreciate
Was it? Motion to adjourn. I'll make that motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
I like it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? I want to thank everyone for coming.